Chris, I'm so glad. I'm so glad we were able to make this happen, man.
I know, man.
Yeah.
Same. It's been we've been talking about it for a long time.
We have.
Yeah.
And I like to start with, like, to be honest, man, just fun questions. And and I don't know the answer to these, but what was your favorite childhood sport growing up that you played?
I've never really been a sports guy, but I think as a kid, I was definitely drawn to football as a kid. I think it had more to do with the how cool the helmets looked. I think it had more to do with that than the actual sport itself. And I ended up playing football in 1 year of middle school, and then later on I would play again in high school when I realized I'm maybe not good at this particular activity. And I was fast and I could hit, but I couldn't catch a damn ball to save my life, especially in the midst of a play. And I remember just kind of I was gravitating towards theater at the time, and definitely worried how that was going to play out with all my buddies. Like, I'm quitting football to go do Peter Pan, you know. And
well, I mean, if you had the flying technique though on the football field,
unfortunately, I didn't get Peter Pan. I was Smee, but yeah, I found out that that wasn't my thing.
Well,
Long story short.
No, man. If you so it's kind of funny. Like, you definitely had two more skills than I did. If you were fast and you could hit, that was better than I could not. I did not play football.
I remember in high school, I would always get like hyped up for things, like just an excuse to go extra, and I like went with the war paint for homecoming, and found out you couldn't do that.
Why not?
Yeah, apparently that's not allowed at school.
Really?
Yeah,
So
so
they
I had to
send you home?
No, they just made me wash it off. But I was
Okay.
I did my buddies, I did mine, I did lightning bolts on dude's head. I was going all out.
Oh man, that's a lot of effort.
It was a lot of effort.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which kind of, now that I think about it, I was definitely born for theater.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm sitting here trying to do plays in football.
That's so funny. Well, so when did you start with music, and what was the first instrument you played?
Guitar, and I was kind of around music my whole life. My dad, my granddad, they played music, and my granddad played like every string instrument. Well, lap steel, guitar, maybe a little drums here and there. But he was very musical. It was a very musical family. My dad's a pretty decent guitar player himself, and I just didn't care. Like they played, you know, a lot of Merle Haggard and things like that I wasn't really into as a kid, and I just never really. I kind of like was around it and probably could have learned a lot, and just didn't really give a shit at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward to, and I kind of always sang along to the radio, and thought that I was a good mimicker. Like I could mimic people, or I just thought that wasn't anything special. Everybody could do this. So I didn't really consider myself a singer. I just enjoyed doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I always saw myself as a comic book artist. Like that was what I wanted to do. Like I was going to be, even at like 5 years old, I was telling my parents I'm going to be a famous comic book artist. I didn't know what that was at the time, but I was going to do it. And, I was drawing a picture of like Captain America and Spider-Man, and my dad said, "Are you going to be an artist?" And I was like, "What's that?" He's like, "Somebody who draws pictures." I was like, "Well, yep."
Yeah, that's me.
That's clearly what I do. Yeah. So my whole life I saw myself as an artist, and then I kind of wanted to be an actor, and then high school comes, and I think it's my junior year at this point, and a buddy of mine, or new buddy of mine rather, in my algebra class, he was a year ahead of me, we just happened to be in the same class for whatever reason. It was at the end of class one day, and he had his acoustic with him, and he was playing like "Fell on Black Days" or something from Soundgarden, and I was like, "Oh, that's my jam," and we kind of hit it off, and this class is kind of the catalyst of my career, because our algebra teacher, shout out to Ron Schultz, he was a young dude, he was the cool teacher.
Yeah.
And this one particular day, he, I guess, ran out of things to do. So he assigned everybody in groups and said, you guys should, I want you guys to write a poem or a song with the terms we've learned this week. And
so like math terms?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Write a song with math terms.
Yeah, or a poem, just something. Yeah. I'm like, wow, we're getting desperate here. And I've known Robert for a little bit at this point. He plays guitar. He doesn't know I sing. And I was like, dude, we got in groups. And it was with this other girl that I, for the life of me, cannot remember her name. One day I'll remember. She wrote the lyrics. I didn't know anything about writing poems or songs.
And these are all math terms.
Yeah,
right?
and these are math terms.
So
and
crazy.
I'm a football player, as we've already established. And I was like, dude, what if we do this for real? Like let's make like what if we make this like power ballad or something?
Yeah. Like you're going all in.
He has no idea. He thinks I'm just joking around. I was like, dude, come over to the house later.
Yeah.
And let's take these lyrics and let's write a song. And so he comes over and he's like playing this beautiful finger picking melody, and I'm just shaking. I'm just sitting here reading these lyrics, and I know the name of it. I can't remember anything else about it.
Yeah.
But it was called Average. And I just start singing very nervously, and I hadn't found my range at this point. So I'm like, singing in this register. He goes, dude, you sound like Tracy Chapman. And I'm like, sick. I love Tracy Chapman. Yeah. And he's like, bro, like, you're legit. Like, you're good. And I was like, for real? I mean, I kind of, at this point, was thinking I had something. I just didn't know how to tell people. When you go your whole life thinking of yourself as one thing, like, how do I tell even my best friend that I'm this?
Right.
You know what I mean? Without just saying, dude, by the way, I'm a singer too.
Yeah.
Get the hell out of here.
Like, I've known you for a while, and I haven't seen
And my best
side.
friend who lived with me at the time, which is another whole story in itself, was like, whatever, dude. I'm like, no, dude, I think I'm pretty good. Like, I was at the time, like, I was really into Boys to Men, and I was like, and I was really into like the soulful melodic kind of stuff, but I was also into grunge, and so I was like kind of, in between like stages of music at the time, and when he heard me, he was just like, what? But anyway, back to the other story at hand. We complete this song, and this is the first time I've ever written a song.
Yeah.
I didn't write it, but I'm now putting it to music. And we did it in front of my parents first. Nervous, that is an understatement. And they were just like, but my mom, she was a bit of a singer as well, and or she was a singer, and she always could tell, like, she's like, I always knew you could sing, just listening to you in the car, in the back seat, like singing along to whatever. So we go to class the next day, and I'm like, we're going to do this, right? We're going to do it. Like, we're going to get in front of class, and we're going to.
Did you guys have like instruments in the whole 9 yards?
He had his guitar.
Okay.
And I just sat there and, because I didn't play an instrument at the time. This is literally my first time doing this. And we did it. And by the end of the day, we had already performed in every one of his classes.
No
like
way.
he brought, it was,
Yeah.
and we ended up doing some live covers as well to boot, just to spice things up. We're like, dude, we should take this on the road, you know? And so he had a band at the time, and they already had a singer, and he was like, dude, you should come sing with my band. And like, we do covers, and you could do some songs. We already got Matt, and he could do some songs. And I was like, I don't know. And he kind of twisted my arm, and I went to their band practice one day, and I just got the bug, man. I was like, this is what I think I should be doing.
Yeah. And how old were you at the
I
time?
was probably like 16.
Yeah.
And he started showing me some guitar chords. So I started kind of running with that and writing my own stuff. And then eventually I was like, dude, I'm leaving the band, I'm starting my own. And we ended up practicing in his garage. So he was kind of like this my buddy Robert, who became like a mentor / like, he kind of saw something that I didn't. And he ended up not even pursuing music. And he always said, like, dude, you're gonna be way better than me. Like you got something, like, you need to run with this. And so me and my buddy that lived with me, he decided he was going to pick up bass, and I was learning guitar. We were both terrible at our instruments. We were learning together, and we ended up getting lessons in Charlottesville, Virginia, at this music shop, and started a band with another dude in our class who said he played drums. Found out he was pretty decent, and yeah, it just kind of snowballed from there. And then I saw live in '97, the band live.
Oh, dude, that was my first concert. Yeah.
Secret Samadhi.
Yeah. So like, it was 1996 when I saw them.
Okay.
Concert, but
Yeah. So that was like right before Secret Samadhi came out. Did he have the spiky blonde hair at the time?
He had,
or the shaved head with the big ponytail?
I honestly don't remember, because we were sitting so far away.
Yeah.
We were in St. Louis at the UMB, and we were all the way back in the lawn. Like,
Right.
just me and my college buddies.
Yeah.
This is the first concert I've ever been to.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I saw that show, and it was kind of like a defining moment. I was like, I'm gonna do that.
And then so American Idol. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember that vividly. My oldest son was 1. He was actually just born at the time, and I'm not just saying this because you and I are talking, but our family and friends like would come over. We'd have like a get together of this, and you were in that season our favorite, and we thought hands down, we're like, this dude's taking it. Like, he won already. This was like,
that's why I lost.
Yeah.
a lot of people said that, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah, man, thank you. That was after years of basically spinning wheels.
Yeah.
And feeling like, man, I feel like I'm having to pay people to come see me. I'm having to put people on the guest list, and they don't even show up. Mm-hmm. And it was just this, feeling of, this is more work than yield, and I can't keep doing this, because at the time I was, still kind of newly married,
right,
being a parent to a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I had no idea what I was doing. And so I couldn't afford to just get in a van and just go tour the East Coast or whatever, and hope to get discovered in the bars like the greats. And this is also before YouTube, and I always say it's pre-internet, because even though it existed, it still feels like pre-internet, because I think all we had was like MySpace.
Yeah, and no smartphones at the time.
No smartphones, and the iPhone wasn't even a thought yet.
Right.
And there was no access to record labels. There was no access to there was always somebody that knew somebody that had an uncle that worked at a record label. That
Right.
that they,
Yeah.
I get your stuff to them, and man, that's all you got to do, and get on the radio. I'm like, sounds so easy.
Right.
Like, you do that, bud. You go right ahead and tell your uncle, cousin, whoever, and nothing ever, obviously nothing ever happened. And so I was very much against doing anything like that because it didn't fit my idea of how to make it in rock and roll. You don't, like, my heroes would have never gone on American Idol. My heroes wouldn't have gone on Star Search or anything like this. And so I was kind of bullheaded in that sense. And my wife was always like, you gotta, like, subtly basically saying, you're better than your band.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need to break away. Like, what you're doing isn't working. It's holding you back. And, I didn't want to hear that, because that's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm the musician here. You don't. And I got to a point where I was like, yeah, I think she might be right here. Because other people started saying the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the classic trope, right? Your wife tells you one thing over and over again, and you're like, whatever. And then somebody else you respect tells you, and you're like, oh, you'll never believe what I decide. And she's like, oh, really? I've been telling you this shit for years.
Right.
But Rockstar in Excess was a thing, and I'd found out that was having auditions, and I was like, oh, that's more up. Like, that's a rock thing. I can do that. And I got an audition for that, and it didn't work out. And at that point, I was like, all right, well, I've already made up my mind that I was going to do something with this. And that didn't work out. So what's the next thing I can do? American Idol. And I'd seen the season prior, and noticed it wasn't the same as what I remembered. It wasn't just a bunch of people singing to a track. There's a real band, and oh, this dude just did, Whipping Post, and this dude did Queen, and I'm like, okay, this is feeling like, this is Carrie Underwood's year, Bo Bice and Constantine Marula. So I'm like, this is feeling like at least there's a space for me here. Like, even though I don't do what either of those guys are doing, maybe I can kind of weasel my way in here, and even if I barely make it or get on there for a week, get voted off, at least people might know who I am, and I can get more gigs in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Right.
That was my forward thinking. And the rest is history.
Yeah.
It was far beyond what I ever anticipated happening. And it was terrifying. I'd never done anything like it.
Yeah. I can only imagine, too. I want to go back to when you were, kind of like, man, like, this just isn't happening.
Yeah.
But you knew that something was there. And I think for most of us, man, when we're chasing a dream, we just get so frustrated we're just not getting the eyes on what we're doing, or we just don't know what that missing ingredient is. And if you were to look back before all that, like, what do you think kept you going?
There was always a carrot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was always something. It was inevitable. Like, just as I thought, like, this is it, I guess I'm going to do something else, there was always something that kind of made me go, ooh. And then that would sustain me for another year. Mm-hmm. And then there was always this sense of, like, the universe was like, don't give up.
Yeah, just keep
see this right here?
Yeah.
And then there was a battle of the bands that happened, that, like Zippo Hot Tour or something, that my band at the time, we were able to somehow get on. And then we got interviewed by Katie Darrell, who ended up becoming, a host on Access TV. And this is back in like 2004, 2003 or something like this. And there was always something, or a local, public TV network would want to feature bands, in the area, or something that would make me feel like, oh, we're getting something. That's a step, right? Like that's progress. That's a step in forward motion here. And that happened for like 10 years. So there was always like, just something. As I thought, like, oh, that didn't work out, something else would kind of rear its head and go, don't give up. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
And I was stupid enough to believe that I was meant to do this. So the combination of that and whatever, thank God I was, paying attention to the signs, because it would have been so easy. We were broke. We were barely making it as it was. And it would have been so easy to just go, yeah, maybe this is not for me. Didn't work out for my dad, not going to work out for me. And I'm just going to get a good paying job and be miserable.
Just be miserable.
And I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I just couldn't do it.
Who at the time, like looking back, was there someone or were there people that were just speaking straight support into you, not to give up, and who was it? What were they saying to you that kept you going?
It was anyone who ever came into contact with me in a show setting. And I guess at first I kind of thought it was all BS. People are going to tell you to your face, everything you just did was amazing. But I started hearing things that were just like, no, you don't understand, like, what you just did. Like, I felt something, like, and that was always, like, kind of the common thread is someone would say, like, you made me feel something, like, and that isn't always the case, I think, with performers. And, it's one of the things that I look forward to when I see a show. Like, I want it to evoke some sort of emotion. And I could see it on their faces. I could see it on people's faces. And how, and this is before people were watching with their phones, so they were really engaged. And I guess I just started to believe it, that I could do something that they couldn't.
Yeah. I can see that, yeah. And to be honest, like, I remember in 2006 when we were watching on Idol, and we always looked forward to you performing. 'Cause it was now that you say it, I couldn't put those dots together before, but when you performed on that show, like, that was the first time me and my family saw you. We were just like you feel it, like it hits you in the heart.
Oh, thank you.
So
man.
yeah, of course. The thing that I get from you though is that, yes, you're a performer, yes, you're a talented musician, but you just come across to me as a very real, authentic person who works like a savage. you have, like, I don't know if you've been told this before, but, like, you just come across to me as someone who relentlessly works and constantly honing their craft and always wanting to be better. Someone who doesn't sit back and just relax. Where does all that come from?
I think I grew up in a very, very, very small town in North Carolina. And when I say small, it was like 900 people. Like 100 people. It was one street. Everybody knew everybody. And we worked. We worked. We grew every vegetable we ate. My dad, hunted every piece of meat we ate. And you didn't have a choice. We cut firewood. It was from the moment, if we weren't in school, we were either cutting wood, reaping, picking vegetables or planting vegetables. Sweet potatoes were the worst. That was like, it felt like a never-ending task. And we're doing this by hand. He's on the tractor. We're doing this by hand. Like, it was hard. Like, if I even like try to imagine any of my kids doing any of this or growing up in this environment, they would crumble, but we didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And so if the sun was out, we weren't inside. Like, we were outdoors. And I know that sounds like the classic age-old, like, you know, we couldn't come inside until the street lights came. You know, it was true. Like, if the weather was permissible, we were outdoors, we were working, and if we weren't working, we were doing something to keep ourselves busy, you know, in the woods or whatever. And I think just that, and my dad worked his ass off. Like, finding out later, we barely made it, but we never knew it, you know. And my mom worked her ass off, and so it was like I was surrounded by work ethic. Like, I didn't really have a choice but to do it, because you don't talk back and you don't say no.
Right.
So, and I hated every bit of it. Like, I hated it. But then as I got older, I feel like that essence was just in me. Like, I knew how to live under pressure. Mm-hmm. Like, when things got hard, you get another job. When when you can't make it, you go do something else. Like, there's no sitting back and going, well, we couldn't pay our, mortgage this week or this month because, the job doesn't pay good. So you go get another one. Like, like there was never a choice. And when it came to the music, I just I didn't stop. And I figure I guess I didn't really, extrapolate this and until recently, that I just applied that thing that I put, all the work I was putting into things that I hated, and put it into things that I love. Now, I still do not do well with things that I have little interest in, like the mundane, but right. I do it begrudgingly, but I will do it. Like, we don't have any help right now at our house. This is the first time since, my career started that we have nobody like helping with kid pickups or anything like that. And so I'm the Uber, right. I'm taking kids to doctor's appointments. Because my wife is so spread thin when I'm away that it's like, what can I do to take any of this off the and this isn't me saying this like I'm a hero here, because there's times where I'm like, yesterday I like lose it in the house. I'm like, I'm sick of the mundane stuff. Like, this sucks. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I know, I get it, but it still has to be done.
Right.
And it's showing our kids that life isn't easy. Life isn't just, handed to you. And so now we've got them all in the kitchen every night, cleaning up, and, we're slowly adding things to their to-do list as they get older, and instilling this sense of like, oh, you want that? Okay, cool. Then you earn it.
Yeah, you gotta work at it.
You got money from a gift card, then I don't need to be paying for this. Oh, grandpa sent you a gift card for your birthday. Awesome. Now stop asking me for right. to buy you a game on your iPad. So I guess it was just I picked it up. My dad was one of those is one of those guys that he wouldn't call anyone to fix anything. Like, this dude fixed everything, whether it was carpentry, whether it was plumbing, whether it was a broken window. Like, and there was no resources. He just knew how to do it. Now I've got YouTube where I know
YouTube.
Like the other day, my hot water heater broke, and I'm like, I'm not calling anybody. And then I fixed it because of YouTube. And the other day I had to replace a garbage disposal. And I think those things definitely came from my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've realized that I'm good at things that I didn't know I was good at. Which is dangerous, because now my wife wants me to fix everything.
Oh, yeah.
I've exposed myself.
Right.
Yeah.
So you and I are the opposite in that way, to where, the way I grew up, like, and this is no excuse, but like, I have like 2 left feet, when it comes to 2 left hands, when it comes to fixing stuff. Like, I'm just, but there is YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, I can usually figure it out on YouTube if I can. But, that's good to know. I mean, because, growing up like that, I knew you came from a lot of hard work, but the detail that you shared, man, that's a grind.
Yeah.
That is a grind. And the interesting thing too is, especially now, this generation, like like me and you being dads, right? I think, and I don't know if you feel this way, but I do. I had to work my tail off growing up as well. And nothing was ever given. And my childhood was absolutely crazy, with everything going on, and dad, father figures in and out and that kind of thing. Now my temptation, and I always have to fight it, is to overserve. I want my kids to be comfortable and happy. So I always have to, but they're not. Like
I'm guilty of that too. We've been there. We went through that phase.
I think we all do, but at the same time, it's like, man, like, I want my kids to be happy, but at the same time, like, no, you're going to work, right? Even my older ones, like, they have phones, 17 and 16, and they have an hour of screen time on that phone, right? And then all their apps shut down, and they freaking hate it.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. And they're just like,
I mean, we have screen time limit, but if I brought it down to an hour, they would probably revolt.
Right. Yeah,
we quit.
Yeah, they do. But it's good, and they'll push back and they'll say, be like, Dad, like so and so, like, they don't have screen limits. Like my 17-year-old, he's gonna be almost 18. He's like, Dad, like, I'm gonna be 18 in 2 months. Like, do I really have to have a screen time? I'm like, if you're living here, yeah. Like, you're gonna help. Like, you're not gonna be like, zoning out on your phone and not doing anything. Like, you're just not gonna do that.
Yeah, that's tough. And we've there for a while we didn't have that limit set, and because it was just easy.
Yeah. It's the easy button.
We were, oh my God, 3 very needy, very like different kids in the house. Twins are 13, the youngest is 9 now, but this was back when 3-4 years ago when they were much younger, and it was just so much easier to just go, here you go.
The digital babysitter.
Now I can get stuff done.
Yeah.
And boy, man, when that screen time goes off now, the amount of times we hear our names because they can't find anything else to do with their time, and it's just insane. And I'm guilty of it too. I'm like, I'm sitting here looking at them going, that's all y'all do, and I'm like, I'm never without my phone.
Yeah.
But I can. Well, I'm doing work stuff.
Right.
Not all the time.
It's like, I'm going to teach you how to make excuses.
Not 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I look back at my childhood now as if I was looking in an encyclopedia of a time that I've never seen. Like, just picturing me out in the yard, like plucking chickens and planting sweet potato. I'm like, that feels like centuries ago.
It does.
When I really think about that.
Yeah.
I agree. I was born in the last week of the 70s, so I always say the 70s were wild, man. But I don't know anything about it. But it's crazy how much has changed since the 80s.
100%.
Especially growing up in a very small and I think I knew at an early age, and I didn't know why or what I was going to do, but I knew I was bigger than that town, and I knew it wouldn't contain me. Like, I always felt like, this is temporary. I do not belong here. This isn't what I was made to do. And it's very strange to have that sort of over-exaggerated confidence in yourself at such an early age.
Well, especially in
and I don't even know where it came from.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like I had anybody to look up to that was making it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or doing big things out of Lasker, North Carolina. I just knew that I was going to be that one.
I can only imagine that it had to be challenging. And what I mean by that is, just family, people you're around. I grew up in St. Louis, so it was always a bigger city type feel, right? But I did move away right after college to take my very first job in pharmaceutical sales. I had to move to this little tiny small town in southern Illinois, and I lived there for 2 years, and I made friends there. But it was a small town. There was only, and this is bigger than what you came from, but I think it was only 11,000 people.
Yeah.
And I would hang out with people that I made friends with, and we'd be in like the Applebee's, right? And they'd be like, "Oh, you see who just walked in? Well, that's, you know, that's so-and-so's son. And when they were in high school, they did this, and this, and then this." And every person that walked in that restaurant, like everyone knew all the dirt of everybody. And I'm always like, how do you guys know this stuff? And they're like, "Oh, well, you know, small town, we all know each other." But now that you say that, what I noticed about the small town that I lived in for 2 years is there was a few themes that came up. Everyone got married super young, like right out of high school. And everyone had more this very small town type mind. Like, this is where I grew up, this is where we're going to stay, and this and that. And what I noticed was, as soon as people were talking about bigger things, the other people around would be like, "No, man, you're not." Basically, the message was, why would you even think that? Why would you want to move away from here or do something bigger with your life?
Yeah.
So did that type of attitude surround you by friends or anything like that growing up? Like, if you started thinking or talking like that, people would be like, "No, aren't you going to stay here?" Was there ever that?
That's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever thought of that. I think either my family just placated to me and just was like, "Oh, that's nice."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah," you know. But no one ever said it's not going to happen. Like, "Dude, what are you thinking? That's like winning the lottery. That, you know, you should just give up." They were always, I guess, kind enough to amuse me a little, you know, and just kind of go along with it. So I never thought any different. I never had anybody like really cutting me down or making me think that was an impossibility.
That's good.
But I didn't go around advertising it either. It was just kind of those casual moments I would kind of say that to my parents or whatever. Yeah, I don't think I ever, you know, I wasn't the kind of person that would always just tell everybody what I was planning on doing. Because maybe I even part of myself knew how crazy it sounded.
Sure, yeah.
You know. And there were so many different phases of what that was going to be. You know, as a kid, it was, like I said, it was a comic artist, and then I was going to be the next Jean-Claude Van Damme. At least I thought. I could do all of his moves. Yeah. You know, I watched all his movies. And and then I found music, and I think that was when I started, you know, and at that point I'm older. So I'm like 17, 18 years old. So I have enough people that like I said, are saying things like, "Dude, like, you guys should be on the radio."
Yeah.
Looking back, we should not have. Like, we weren't that good. But one of my favorite things I ever heard was, you know, we always kind of beat ourselves up, you know, if we have a bad show or whatever. And you always have someone telling you that was the best show they've ever seen, even though you're like, "Dude, I was there." Like, it's never as bad as you think it was, but it's never as good as they said it was.
I'm gonna have to write that down.
And you can apply that to anything in life.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I just believed it so much that, and maybe I was just delusional and didn't allow any. But I can't think of a situation where someone was like, you know, telling me it wasn't in the realm of possibility.
Right.
Yeah,
That's good. I'm glad you didn't have that experience. 'Cause I saw that when I
know that a lot of people experience that, which is heartbreaking, especially as a child.
Yeah.
And which is, you know, for me, I've never tried to tell my kids what they should do. Even, you know, I'll try to encourage something if I see an interest in something, and try to facilitate or or support that. If like my, my kids, my twins are both very, very musical. It's insane. They're finding it way before I did, and but I'm not putting that pressure on them to like, when you gonna start a band? Like, when you gonna? Because they're finding it themselves, and no one ever told me what I should do or what I should, So I think it's important to, as much as you don't want to discourage, you don't want to over encourage either, because that's your own, idea of what they should, or your own ego speaking, you know?
Yeah.
So I've tried to kind of limit that. But I do try to, encourage if I see like a lane that they're excelling in, or, but usually they kind of speak up and tell me what they want to do.
We do.
I don't even know why I went there. You didn't ask,
No,
but
you're good,
but
man.
it just kind of reminded me of, when we were talking about the discouragement.
Yeah, no, that makes your actual dad story is pretty fascinating. Meaning, like, you being a dad.
Yeah,
Like, you and Deanna were just kids when y'all met, and then like
I was a kid.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
And then you came into the picture, and she already had 2 kids.
Yeah.
Right. So you're like literally going from like this, no relationship where there were no kids involved.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
now you're in a relationship where you're
It's
you're
crazy.
like a father figure.
like I'm 20 years old,
Right.
and I just get out of a 5-year relationship. I was always a relationship person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, I'm just going to go have fun. Me and my buddy that lived with me, we're going to go visit his sister. It's her birthday. We're going to North Carolina, and it's time to party. It's time to have a good time. And then I meet her at my buddy's sister's. And
Did you all hit it off just like right away?
like the second we locked eyes, and I'm thinking, I'm about to play this field. I'm about to, I've been taken for 5 years.
Right. I'm back on the market.
I'm back on the market. Nothing happened.
Right.
We just talked for hours, and she's like telling me all the things to try to like scare me away. Well, I have kids. I'm 27. I'm like, cool, because I'm just thinking I'm gonna have fun with this person.
Yeah.
And then within like, I think like a week later, I'm back in Virginia, and we're on the phone like every night for like 3 hours. And I'm like, this is not what I was expecting. And 6 months later, we were married.
Wow.
And on paper, is the dumbest decision I've ever made. Like, 20 years old, never lived alone, and now you're someone else's dad.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know the first thing about parenting.
Right.
What are you doing? Everyone was trying to talk me out of it. This is where people were trying to discourage me.
Sure, yeah.
You are making a terrible mistake. What are you doing? The band we're just like getting gigs. We're, like, you're going to, what? I'm 20. I'm not even 21 yet.
Mm-hmm.
And November, it'll be 24 years.
Wow.
And the lessons that I have learned in this 24 years, I could write probably a series of books. But yeah, at the time it was one of those things that I didn't think too much about. It was talk about just following your heart and your gut and not listening to anyone around you. It was the best decision I ever made. I mean, I know that sounds like cliche, but the amount of growth that took place between the time I was 20 and the time I am now, through these situations, through these kids, through this relationship, I can't I would have never imagined any of it. And if I would have known these things that were going to take place during this I would have been like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, are you stupid?
Yeah.
But man, just invaluable.
I'm curious about that because it's interesting. You've known Deanna as long as I've known Jess. Actually, I've known her a little bit longer. We this is our 28th year that I've known her. 20 years we've been married, and I'm curious about these lessons that you've learned because I know for me, like I joke with her all the time. Like, hey, Lawson, how many times did Dad I will never live this down. How many times did Dad break up with Mom before we were married? 7 times in 7 years. Just every year, it became a joke. Like,
we almost broke up right before the wedding. She got terrified. I found out everything about me.
Same.
I found out I had anger problems. I found out that I was not a good person a lot of the time. I found out that I was really shady. Things that I was never exposed to about myself all happened while I was responsible for kids and committed to a person who was older than me, who had been there, done that, and then some, and already had her own struggles in life. And meanwhile, I'm coming out of, thinking like my life has been great, and I'm going into like real life.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had to pay bills. I've never had to be responsible for anyone but myself. And I found out a lot about myself, and it was a lot of years of untangling, and I'm still untangling a gigantic ball of yarn.
Yeah.
And I've given her 7 times 7 times 7 reasons to leave me. And we've both have grown as people, and we were committed partners in life through the good shit, the bad shit, the awful shit. And we haven't allowed it to destroy us, even when it would have been much easier to.
I'm curious about that. What do you think? Your story and Jessica, and me and Jess it's the same. Like I kind of like scratch my head. I'm like, how did you deal with like this growth? Because she was further ahead than I was as far as like her growth and like who she was, where she came from. And I'm always like, why did you stick around when I was like, because when I was a jerk or when I was not who I am today? And she's like, I always loved you, and I always knew that you were someone who is going to constantly work at being a better person. And I believed in that, and I was like, well, that's good. So like we had that, but there were so many things, man. I was a disaster when we first got together. But what do you think it was about you and Deanna? Because here's why I asked this question. What do you think it was about you guys, or the bond you had in your relationship? Because I see it all the time, to where people are just like, well, it's just not meant to be, so we're done.
Yeah, and she had been through that and had been divorced, and said that I'm typically a runner when things get bad, and this would be one of those situations where I would just run. And there were times where we thought that was going to happen. And she said similar things to me, like, I always saw who you could be.
Yeah.
I always saw or had this hope, and I believed that was possible. And but then there was times where I would just keep proving her wrong.
Same.
And time again.
Yeah.
And so it eventually got to a point where I saw it myself.
What do you think that point was?
I think you eventually get tired of your own mistakes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And
Well
you
said.
get tired of beating yourself up, and get tired of making excuses for yourself. And I think I got to that point where I was like, I get to choose. Nobody's making me make these dumb, terrible mistakes. Nobody's forcing me into these situations. Nobody's making me go out and drink all night. And, I think going from zero to rock star and never experiencing college, never experiencing single life, living on my own, I didn't know what I was doing. And I think there was a part of her that understood that and was compassionate, in the sense of, I can see how this happened. But at some point, you have to realize what you're doing to make this happen and have to change that.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to a point where I was tired of the feeling of like, I'm gonna do this right, or I'm gonna make better choices next time. And I was like, nobody's stopping me. I get to do that. And there's just been this road of, listening to books, listening to podcasts, and just trying to surround myself with better information, and trying to envision who I want to be, and making decisions that align with that, so that little by little I become that idea of myself that maybe other people thought I was, or maybe, what she sees in me. And I think there was a lot of heartbreak, and a lot of things that I regret, and a lot of things that I wish I could take back. But at the same time, I don't know if we would be where we are right now had we not gone through that together, and had that sense of compassion, because otherwise it would have just ended up happening with someone else, or someone else.
Yeah.
So, I think it's like I said before, there was always that carrot.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it was the kids. It's like, these older kids have been through enough. We have these twins that are, we don't want to devastate our kids by splitting up, and there was all these little things that kind of kept us hanging on,
Mm-hmm.
even begrudgingly, especially for her. And you learn to grow through that, if you choose to.
I think that's the biggest thing right there.
If you choose
if
to.
you choose to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I realized what I wanted out of our life, and what I wanted out of our relationship. And I realized that if I'm going to build the trust that is needed to sustain this relationship at the level that we want to be, if I want to get to the next level of the game, so to speak, then there has to be full transparency. There has to be an unleashing of everything, and almost this willingness to really be okay with what comes next.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to hurt me. It's definitely going to hurt you. But I'm not going to keep this in order to preserve your comfort level where you are right now with me. You have to know who you're dealing with here.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for you to really know, I have to fully allow myself to be vulnerable and just spill everything. And that was a defining moment in our relationship.
I think that is defining moments in relationships like that, the things that aren't going to break us, you know?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing I think about couples that go through hard times together, right? And Jess and I have been, you and Deanna have been, that it's almost, it makes the skin of the relationship really tough,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to the point where, you know, you go through these evolutions and we're like, okay, we went through that. That was really hard.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, and I think whatever comes at us next, we're going to be good. The one thing that I think is really fascinating, and I don't know you that well, obviously, and I don't know Deanna that well at all. But one thing that I get a sense of, and Jessica and I, we really share this incredible friendship. I mean, at the foundation of our relationship, like, she's my best friend. And
Yeah.
yes, it's obviously an intimate romantic relationship. We're also parents, we're married, but she is like my battle buddy,
Yeah.
right? And you guys kind of come across to me as the same.
Oh, she's my favorite person.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, dude,
she's
I love that. Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
she's my favorite person to be around. If I when I think of what I'd rather be doing, you know, with my spare time, it's never like, well, I'm gonna go hang out with my guys, and like, I just want to be home with her. Like, I just want to
Same.
just want to be doing boring stuff with her.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think when you forge that kind of relationship through the hard times, it becomes like unbreakable steel. You know, it is forged in fire. I think the best relationships are the hardest ones, the ones that really test every ounce of your being, because how else are we supposed to grow if everything is just cushy all the time? If we didn't have these kids that were just reflections of everything we do wrong.
Yeah.
And boy, do we get shown. I've raised 5 kids.
Mm-hmm.
2 are biologically mine.
Right.
2 had different dads. The other isn't biologically mine or Deanna's. We raised them all roughly. They've roughly been in the same atmosphere,
Mm-hmm.
same environment. None of them are the same. Like, and every one of them show us different aspects of ourselves that we absolutely hate.
They pick up all the good and all the not so good.
And it's like, I hate this about you because that's exactly what I
used to do.
Oh my God. And it's crazy how they all teach you different things.
Oh yeah.
And I would not be anywhere, especially mentally, where I am right now, if it wasn't for all the lessons that I've learned through these individual little humans that I've had the absolute honor of raising.
What are some of those lessons you've learned?
Oh, I'm learning them every day.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Well, I
Same.
can tell you this. I used to be very much like my dad in the sense of I live and die by the because I said so rule. And
I think that was our generation.
yeah,
too.
that was our
Yeah.
generation. They did the best they could with the tools they had.
did. But I think that was a really common statement back then by them.
And the first 2 kids got the worst parents.
Mm-hmm.
They got the worst versions of us. And the very dogmatic, very shelter you from everything. Everything is wrong. Everything is this. And because I said so, and get your damn socks off the floor. It was just this, it was very rigid and very gaslighty. well, that wouldn't have happened if you weren't doing what you were doing. Like the worst.
Yeah.
And I will lay in bed at night in tears if I have a moment where I just lose my shit on my kids, but I haven't had a chance to like repair it.
Yeah.
And so within minutes, I'll go up and I'll just sit with my kid and be like, look, I know, you know why I was upset. You know what you did, but the way I just handled that is not okay.
Yeah.
And I hope you can forgive me for that. No matter how upset I was, I had no right to speak to you that way. And I've been a perpetual yeller, you know, pretty much my whole parenting career. But it's something that I was like, oh, okay. I have to kind of level the playing field here with my kids and really show them that's not okay. And I have to get rid of my own ego here instead of trying to justify why I was upset or why I spoke to them that way or why. Like, I have to repair this. And that's something I never experienced as a kid.
Same.
And it has completely changed the dynamic of my youngest kids and ourselves. And, you know, our oldest is 25, and they, you know, I've had a chance to repair it with them.
Mm-hmm.
And go, I had no idea what I was doing. And I made terrible parenting mistakes. Terrible. Absolutely horrific. Things that I'm embarrassed about, things that I, you know, wish I could change, but they've said, we're good. We've dealt with that.
Yeah.
Like, we're good.
Yeah.
And every now and then I'll get another memory. I'm like, remember that? And they're like, we're beyond it.
You're harder on yourself.
Yeah,
than they
I'm
are.
harder on myself. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned is to just, you have to be okay with telling them you're wrong.
Yeah.
And for years I was so dogmatic about like, no, because we said so. That's how it is. I'm the parent. And I think I would sometimes filter how I should respond to them right now with what they just did as if my dad was in the room.
Of course. Yeah.
Like, if he saw this, he would be embarrassed of if I didn't lash out or, you know, or really put you in your place. And I just realized that I get to do it differently.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, we do.
And I have to do it differently. I don't have a choice.
Yeah. I
cannot allow this cycle to keep going. And I think that's probably my biggest, I know it sounds simple, just being okay with being wrong.
I think in my experience, I mean, I've talked about this on many podcasts, that when I grew up the same way you did, you know, I told you so, do as I say, not as I do, that type of thing.
Don't ask questions.
Don't ask questions, scream, yell, stonewall, that kind of thing.
Slam doors.
Slam doors, hit you, you know. And I will tell you that I think there's something fantastic because you and I parent the exact same way. And I just had a moment with my 16-year-old. You know, I took him this was last week. I took him to get his driver's test. I took a half a day off of work, and everything was fighting us. So his plates were one day expired. They wouldn't test him because of that. They're like, hey, you got to go to the DMV. And then that's like, you know, that's
the
torture.
best place in the world.
It's awesome. I just love it. And so anyway, one thing leads to another that day. We waited 2 hours for him to have his driver's test. We're waiting in line to get there. Then they tell us we can't test him. Your plates expired yesterday because it was a new car and we had temp tags on it. And I was like,
I'm getting mad right now just hearing.
I know,
this
right? I'm like, and I said, I know. I was like, as soon as he's done testing, though, I need to go get his license. I was gonna get the plates. He's like, I can't test him without the plates. I'm like, oh okay. So I go to the DMV, and I'm already irritated. We've already been waiting 2 hours, only to be told that I got to go to the DMV. And this lady's like, so I go to register the car, and she's looking at the title, and she's like, we can't give you plates for this car. And I'm like, why? And she's like, the wrong amount of what you paid for this car is written on the back of the title. The dealership wrote the wrong amount. And I'm like, are you serious? I was like, so what do I need to do? She's like, well, you need to call the dealer, and then we need to have an affidavit notarized that this was the correct. And this is $4, by the way. $4. $4. And I look at her, I'm like, ma'am, I was like, it's $4. Can we just change? Can we just write it? Can we just change it?
It was only different by $4.
$4. Yeah. And she's like, no, you can't do that. So at this point, I'm like, my blood is starting to boil.
Oh, I can't even.
And I'm quiet, and my 16-year-old is like, you're right. I'm like, I'm fine. And so I get on the phone with the dealership, and I'm just like, I need to speak to so-and-so now. And so then they send me a voicemail. I call right back, and I'm like, you just sent me a voicemail. I need to speak with this person now. So I'm like going back and forth, and I'm like, look, you guys wrote the wrong amount on this title. I'm sitting here. I took a half day off work. I'm like going on and on.
Yeah.
And they're like, all right, well, we'll try to get it done, and we'll fax it over to them, and blah, blah, blah. And I am like livid out of my mind, right? Because at this point we're like 4 hours deep into the day.
Yeah.
And
you got nothing else better to do.
Right. I mean, I did want to do that deep down. So I call my wife, and I'm like, you are not going to believe this. And she's like, what? And I'm like, oh, this is going on. So I'm like, and I get off the phone, and my 16-year-old goes, why are you so mad? And I'm like, boy. Right? What? And I'm like, are you serious? I was like, we've been planning this for 2 weeks, and I was like, and I've got a podcast I got to do, and I was like, if we have to leave, I'm gonna pull you out of school again. Like, this is nuts, man. And so he and I are going back and forth, and I'm like, and then my wife comes up, and turns out we couldn't have got his license that day anyway, because you need a social security card too. So she comes up, she meets me.
That would have set you off.
Oh,
Get
man.
there with the title, and they go, oh, by the way,
you forgot this one other thing. So anyway, at night, everything was fine. He got his license. My wife took over, so I go back to the office and do my podcast. And I just was like, oh, my God, you are such an idiot. You are such an idiot. I was like, you had like this incredible, incredible opportunity to show your kid what it looks like when challenges come your way to be calm. Right.
Under pressure.
Under pressure.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. I was just in a horrible mood that day. And I pulled my son aside, and I'm like, dude, and I've done this a million times. It's a lot like you. Like, I'm always apologizing when I'm an idiot, which is still a lot. And so I'm like, hey, man. And he's just like doing this. Like,
he's ready
smiling.
for it.
And I'm like, I'm really sorry. He's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Why are you so mad? I'm like, you know what? I was like, Mason, here's my job, man. I was like, I get to show you what good looks like. And you're also going to learn very direct message, be like, well, I'm not going to do that. I was like, that was a prime example of how not to react and what not to do.
But that right there is the lesson in itself, because used to, I would let those situations just fester and fester and fester, and the whole day would turn into a shitstorm, and it would just be like one thing after another, and then I don't even know what I'm mad at anymore.
Right.
Where we're able to now go, that wasn't right, and they get to see a lesson in, conflict resolution or just, showing them in real time that you messed up. Yeah. Which is the lesson.
That is the lesson, because, one thing I've noticed about just our kids in general, and my wife is the same way, we just own it, is that when our kids do something wrong, I'm usually pleasantly surprised, because they're like, yeah, I did that. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. Like, no excuses. I did that. And I'm like, well, shit. I was like, that's good. I was like, because no one's going to be perfect. But
and then how do you even get mad when they do that?
Oh, I know.
It's like, don't do that again.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But I still want to be mad, right? But I think it's cool, because you're teaching them ownership. Like, very rarely do I ever say, whoa, it was because of that, and it was because of this and that and this. And like, you can raise a kid who's going to be excuses. And the funny thing is, they're probably going to learn that from us. So like, if you're doing that, I'm doing it. I think one good thing that comes out of that is exactly that. That is like, well, this is the lesson. This is humble pie. Yeah.
And I've got one kid that is the king of excuses. And that he is 100% me. Like, he is my doppelganger, and it drives me absolutely crazy
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do I like show this without just saying, dude, you're nothing but excuse. Like, I'm constantly having to figure out how to show a better way to just own it.
Right.
I'm not saying what you did was bad. I'm just saying you did this. Just say okay. Don't give me another reason why you did it.
Right.
This just happened last night. I'm like, dude, this could have been an easy conversation. Just, okay, I won't do that again. Like, it is crazy, but I realized that was me my entire life.
Yeah.
Oh, constantly coming up with the justification of, and it's also how I parented for many years. So you get a real callback to your own stuff.
Oh, 100%.
A lot of the times.
All the good habits, all the bad habits,
Yep.
you see them raise up in there.
I love when I see the good stuff. It's
Yeah,
like,
me too.
oh. And it's usually from my wife. It's not like
Same.
it's like, oh, I'm so glad you got that from her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to give this segment over to someone who's way better at interviewing than me, and that is my 10-year-old son, Lawson.
Excellent.
So, Lawson, want to get a... What's that?
I'm not better interviewer.
Oh, you are.
Aw.
Yes, you are. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Ask Chris what you want to ask him.
What's your favorite instrument?
It would have to be the one that I know how to play, which is guitar. Although I wish I could play piano.
You learned how to play piano a bit.
Yeah, I played piano.
Yeah, my son plays, and he's pretty good,
Yeah.
and I can kind of mess around with it, but I'm not fluent.
Do you want to ask Chris if he has anything really cool coming up?
What's your next tour?
We are starting the tour March 21st in Pennsylvania with Breakin' Benjamin, which I'm very much looking forward to. Yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Gotten just such a variety of... None of my questions are scripted, but I
Yeah.
like to ask this one question. Is if we were to fast forward the end of 2024
Mm-hmm.
and you were celebrating things that happened with you in Deanna, your family, just things in general that you hold up your glass of champagne at the end of the year and you're just like, man, I can't believe this, and this happened, and I'm so happy that it did. What would you be telling us that happened?
God, that's tough. I'd like to think that we are closer than ever.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're already there, and that continues to build. That the kids are happy with themselves and are thriving and celebrating their own wins. That we did it, and we continue to do it,
Yeah.
in a big way, and that we're vulnerable with each other, and that we have each other to hold.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's the fascinating thing about, some of the people that have asked that question too, because I haven't done it on every podcast, but I will here and there, is the cool thing that usually always comes back is the simplicity in all of it.
Yeah.
Just like, we're close, we're thriving, like
Yeah.
things are good, No one's like, oh, I wish I had that, $3 million yacht.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's always these very simple things around the connection, around thriving, around life is good, our relationships are good. It's always about those very simple things that are most meaningful.
Yeah, it changes the whole dynamic in the home.
Yeah, it does.
When there's this sense of just safety, like everyone just feels
1,000%.
safe and comfortable to be themselves and to, it's kind of where we are right now, and it's just it's awesome.
That's cool. Man.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming
Thank you
on,
for
man.
having me,
Oh,
man.
of course. This was so
Absolutely.
much fun, man. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank
I know
you.
you're going to crush it. Now, I will. You want more?
I have one more question.
Okay, here we go.
What you got? You got to speak into the mic.
What's your favorite song that you made?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Favorite song that I've ever made I mean, I'm kind of I'm always a sucker for the new stuff because it's what's the most relevant to what I'm or who I am in the moment. So I have to go with the new one pieces.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's a good question, bro. Yeah, nice. Awesome, dude.
Awesome,
Well,
man.
thanks
Thank you for
again.
having me,
You
Larry.
bet.